Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome.
This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. Looking forward to having a powerful and necessary discussion on the remake, the reboot of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We're going to be talking about this in context of realities of race, racial covenants here in Los Angeles, wealth, comedy, where we're at now, why we need to see a show that's 30 years removed from television. Understand, we're in 2022. That show, I believe, was on the air in the mid to late 90s. Something is going on where there's a psychosis going on amongst Black America with Black culture, where we seem to be stuck in time. Think about it. In 2000, were you really trying to see a remake of The Good Times? Were they really trying to push that? No, they weren't. No, it wasn't their time no more. Come on, man. You got all these people painting themselves like it's like 30 years ago is yesterday. Oh, man. We're going to have this discussion today. Can we talk? Oh, my God. Thank you again for the support to Tiffany as well. I appreciate that support. Please use the super chat or Patreon is Tone Talk. Cash App is Tone Talks. Y'all know how to hit me up. Join the Patreon, support my channel so that I can continue to bring you this content and have these discussions that aren't being had in this same way anywhere in America. So they're going to reboot a comedy that's 30 years removed that had no context for wealth 30 years later when we know so much more, and show us the Decadent Veil. Again, Decadent Veil concept I came up with, published on the Huffington Post nearly 5 to 7 years ago now, framing the context of an illusion of wealth that particularly is pressed upon Black folks, but is present across America. But again, particularly is present among Black folks, where Black celebrity is used as a mask to cover up Black poverty and also make us love wealthy people, even if they ain't wealthy themselves. Come on. So what we remember, what we recall is that we used to not know wealth data. How do I know? We interviewed on this channel Thomas Shapiro, author of Black Wealth, White Wealth. He coined the term, along with Melvin Oliver, in the book Black Wealth, White Wealth, the term racial wealth gap. We discussed this. It's still on the channel. You can go back and look for it. And what he agreed with is that I'm right. It never should have been called racial wealth gap. It creates confusion. But you can understand why they use those terms first, because the wealth level was so much lower. Again, white folks only had $2 trillion of wealth in the 80s. All white families, they only had 25 in 1990. They now have $125 trillion of wealth. We still straggling with nearly nothing. But hold on, let me get to it. Before the 90s, the government, the federal government, did not release wealth data. It only released income data. So as you saw Black folks leave sharecropping farms and start to get industrial jobs, it looked like Black Ascension was mirroring white Ascension. But when you look at the wealth data, you understand we didn't know nothing about what should have been on television. I already did Cosby Show Dreams and showed you how that brownstone they lived in was impossible for Black folks, between racial covenants and the fact that you would have needed to put down nearly $250,000 in 80s money and then pay like $7,000 to $8,000 in mortgage. And ain't no doctor and no lawyer together able to pay that. Come on. Can I get to it? It's necessary, because they're going to tell me, they're going to mix two messages. They're going to say, well, it's fiction. Well, if it's fiction, then tell us it's Lord of the Rings so we can understand this don't make no sense. You might as well go on and give them wings. You might as well go on and give them hairy feet like the hobbits. You might as well go on and make these Black people white, but they did in the show. But they just didn't tell you it was fiction. But then they mix that, and when I say they, I'm talking about Black America at large, with this idea of we don't only want to see POFO. We want to see a mix. But hold on, the middle Black family in this country today makes about $45,000. Middle. The middle Black family in 78 made about $31,000. So you can just do the numbers. It was around 36, 37 back in the 90s. So if you want to see the middle, it ain't this family either. So you don't want to see the poor and you don't want to see the middle, and then you say you want to see the top, but then you want me to tell you that this ain't the top. This is just fantasy. Can we get to it? Can I talk about it today? They never should have had this on television. It was a disaster. And too many of you guys now have framed your image in the context of fantasy, and we can't do no real politics. I can't do no real politics with anybody who's congratulating Simone Sanders from leaving the Biden White House yesterday and then going to NBC to sell the Biden White House to Black America today with nothing to give us. But you don't even know because you're just celebrating her because she did something. What am I supposed to do? Everybody said, go do politics. Then they gave us trash to do politics with. Make-believe TV. But see, make-believe TV becomes really real when your auntie, your grandmama, your mama, your sister, and your daughter don't want to listen to you. Because make-believe is more real than the reality in your home. The reality at your Thanksgiving. Can we talk? They're going to make it a drama this time. Now, we're going to speak to some of the natural, like, productive things that were in the Cosby Show and Fresh Prince. This is a Family Matters. This is the era. There would be no Black Antonio that came out of a 16-year-old mama and became a lawyer without a Felicia Rashad to say that Black folks could be lawyers. So I'll be clear with that. But what they did have, let me say it to you, is they had comedy. And what they did have is an Adolf spirit. What I'm seeing from the trailer of this show is garbage. I don't need to see no sad version of a watered down version of the ghetto mixed in with a Bel-Air that don't let Black folks into Bel-Air. We'll talk about it because it's Brentwood, really. We'll get into the racial covenants, the details of how much it costs to buy a home, and slow it down in that area. But I don't need fantasy to show me a fake version of a ghetto so I don't do no politics in my real ghetto. Can I say to it? Can I say it today? Oh my God. Y'all feeling me? They showed Carlton, he was an a-hole. Let's go back. Let's just be clear at the happiness of the original Fresh Prince. Y'all remember the original Fresh Prince? It was a comedy. It was a comedy bringing Black family together across status and wealth. It was not what we saw in that trailer. Now, we're not going to get into casting today and how they don't be using ADOS people. Come on. But we don't need no boule poverty kind of hustle that don't exist in a Black America that never achieved no wealth. What I felt when I watched that show is a half a season in, Will Smith was just one of the kids. What I felt after watching that trailer is boule nonsense that didn't happen at that level in Black America. And when I say that trailer, the Peacock, Fresh Prince, drama nonsense, they should have just called that something else. See, a lot of people got to go build their own stuff. Stop using somebody else's name. And I understand Will Smith signed on, and I don't care. Stop using something else to sell your nonsense. We watch this as comedy, as a relief from our own ghetto lives. Now we got to watch a drama that don't make no sense because Black America don't have these back and forth. Do y'all remember Uncle Phil's relationship with Will? And you asked me today whether you felt that when the Uncle Phil introduced himself to the Will in that show. Do y'all remember how ADOS Uncle Phil was? Come on. I ain't feel that in that show. I felt grifter, hustle, nonsense. Fresh Prince SpinOff BelAir drops dark first full-length trailer. We're going to take calls 310-388-3499. Call in. We're going to get to it today. Please support the channel again. Shout out to everybody out there supporting. Again, I fractured my ankle. It should be okay. Hopefully, I won't need surgery. That's what the ortho is telling me. So it's coming along. This is the story all about how a sitcom got flipped, turned upside down. This is the article that you're looking at right now. Bel-Air, the reboot of the 1990s NBC television hit, released a full-length trailer Monday, and there's not a hint of comedy in this new spin on Will Smith's iconic character. In the fresh Fresh Prince take. The premise is more or less the same, only this time the focus on the dark undertones of why Will, now played by newcomer Jabari Banks, has moved out from West Philly. I hope one day we can talk about why you're really here, Will's cousin Carlton tells him before the clip. Do y'all remember Carlton's relationship with Will? Carlton's relationship with Will was one of brother love. They done introduced a boule Ascension that didn't happen here. Now, I'm not saying the first 2 episodes they didn't try that nonsense with us, and even then, it wasn't what we saw in that trailer. They done created a black wealth class that don't exist in Black America, and they are going to suffocate you with it so that you forget the truth of your own situation. They done took this show. So this is the same show as what's the one with the Yaya that I did? What's the name of that show? Y'all know the name of that show. I didn't even watch it after the first episode or whatever. They got all the same show. Empire, this, the one with Yaya, Our Kind of People. That's what it is. All these are the same show. But they figure if they just wrap it different in something that you already know, maybe you'll watch it. Some people will say you got to wait and watch and see. You got to see how good it is first, Tone, to give a judgment. I don't have to wait for nothing. That's what you need to do. It's levels. Now, I'm going to critique the first show as well. Don't worry about it. But before I do that, I'm going to start off critiquing the new show. The intention behind the dramatization of the beloved and formerly lighthearted show premise is to really peel back the layers of these characters and themes in a way that simply couldn't do 30 years ago in the half-hour sitcom format. Morgan Cooper. By what right, by what expertise, by what knowledge of wealth and race, and I'm not talking about just being black, does Morgan Cooper have to project what black life is like? Look, I'm going to tell you a true story. Yesterday, I'm getting out the car with the leg. I get out the car, person that drove me to the hospital or to whatever to get the ortho. I look across the street, 3 Mexicans pulled out a gun, start popping in the park. I throw that person in the car. Afterwards, you got to recalibrate yourself and go upstairs. Tell me Morgan Cooper went through that before he wrote this show. Far too often, it's just like Chris Rock said, we get these people that don't know nothing about that, writing about that. Come on. And that literally happened yesterday. And I'm telling you this not to aggrandize that moment, but to tell you I don't need Morgan Cooper telling me about blackness, wealth, or the ghetto, because he can't tell me about none of it. And I'm saying this to you because we need to slow it down, because part of the reason you understand that he don't understand is that this show originally was made when we didn't have no wealth data. 30 years later, 150 Tone Talk shows later, a report that we covered in Fortune magazine later, he still want to talk about the same thing that we were talking about 30 years ago when we didn't have no data. New Bel-Air trailer shows a darker side of Fresh Prince. I don't need no darker side of Fresh Prince, and I don't need no Fresh Prince in 2022. What I need is a body of politics, an ADOS Foundation, an American Descendant of Slavery Acknowledgement, a reparations. What I need is a black politics. I don't need this show again. This show is 30 years old. We're going to come out with the Temptations. We're going to call them the New Temptations. We're going to come out with the Spinners. We're going to call them the Spinners New. Come on. New Bel-Air trailer shows a darker side of the Fresh Prince. Fresh Prince reboot will begin streaming on Peacock. So they putting it on streaming. They ain't on no national TV. They want to see it. They're going to put it on streaming. That's how they're going to get y'all to sign up to Peacock. Ain't nobody signed up to Peacock black. So they use Insecure and all this little garbage. Get you to sign up over there. And then now you up in there. And they ain't delivered you no politics, no true access. You ain't got no true access as black folks, as a black community, to your own content creation, but you signed up to they streaming. A brand new Bel-Air trailer is here, revealing the darker and edgier approach the series will be taken to the Fresh Prince. Let me show it again, because I need everybody to understand. Fresh Prince, you need no dark side. Fresh Prince was what it was 30 years ago. Now I say that it was extremely, extremely fantastical. And I'll show you how in a second. Don't worry, we're gonna get to it. But what I will say is it had Adolf's love in it. Whereas this new thing, it got a lot of Adolf's hate. Let me take the first caller tonight. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
What's going on, Tom? This is Jermaine calling from Dallas.
Give me your take on this new Fresh Prince. They said they're gonna give us a darker side. We don't know nobody in the show. They just throwing this on the air. They don't want to show it. If this show didn't have, if it had the same people, but nearly the same story, and it had another name, but nobody be talking about it. Go ahead, caller.
So I don't know much about this new show, but I know one thing is for sure. Bunch of bullshit.
Come on.
And so I'm gonna tell you a story because I seen your tweet today, and so I shared the basically to my Facebook page, and I said there's no way in hell Uncle Phil could afford that house in Bel-Air on the judge's salary. And you can just see the dissonance from the responses and the comments.
Pause for a second. Pause for a second. Pause for a second. What I'm gonna show you guys today. Let me get to it right now, just so y'all can start. Your brains can start razzle dazzling around this, because I want you to understand that's only half the story. What you're talking about is this house right here. This house was in Bel-Air. For you guys that are not in Los Angeles, they just showed you some garbage. Let me tell you what I mean by that. What they essentially showed you is a house that was only sold. First of all, a house that's $8 million today. It's $8 million today. But it only was sold one time in 45 years. In 1978. That house on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was sold one time, and it was sold for $730,000. What was happening in 78? Oh, Carter. What was the interest rate on homes in 78? 17%. What does that mean? What was the down payment? 20%. So a black family were there racial covenants? Yeah, they were still following racial covenants in that area. They wasn't letting black people even live over there. Hold on. Jesus. So racial covenants, you got to put down $200,000 in 70s money. Understand, we're looking at good times and Sanford and Son. That's a level of a lot of black life all across America. To get this home, and you gotta pay 17% interest. So you gotta pay $10,000 a month, $10,000 a month in your mortgage in 70s. That's like paying like, I don't know, $75,000 today a month. I think black people don't have any idea on what money is, nor the fact that today only 5% of African American households, according to Citibank, have more than $350,000 counting everything they got. That's it. And they all owe retirees, and you might know one of them because it might be your grandmama, and she don't have nothing either. Go ahead.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I kind of proved the point for him because they started coming in and was like, well, you don't know he was an investment if he had stock. You don't know if he was doing it. I said, and I had to explain to him like a lawyer in the 90s. Let's assume he was a partner. I was like, let's assume he was a partner. The greatest partner back then maxed out at about $300,000. And we're talking about an average partner, he may have made $130,000 a year. You throw in his wife, because you said that she was a doctor. She got her PhD. But she wasn't no doctor, she was a
Bruh, slow it down.
She only made.
Bruh, I thought she seemed like a stay-at-home mama. Everybody was already at home. Bruh, you don't have to go that far. They had this house. See, I think that people that don't live in a very, very, very wealthy area impress middle-class values on the most elite neighborhoods because they don't understand. What it's saying, and I'll explain to you, and I don't know how to like make the Rubik's Cube make sense. You don't have to count the salaries because that's not how you pay for that home. You inherit that home back then. Because what was happening was, look, I met with Mark Walper, who did Roots. His daddy did the original Roots, and he did the remake. That area, a lot of that was paid for with Hollywood money from back in the 40s and 50s. You inherit that home from your daddy. You don't buy that home at 17% interest. Hold on one second. It's a siren going by. Let me explain. Because I think we get too far into literally that model. That's middle class buying a house. That ain't that neighborhood though. And I'm trying to help black people understand, but it's like what's happening now is that, and I understand that's the friendship circle. They don't know no better. And I'm sorry that some of them got to go from your friendship circle. What I'm saying to you is that there were racial covenants. It was illegal in some to sell it to a black person. They was making it that way. So first, in the 70s. Okay, we move forward. They didn't even sell them homes. So that home was built and then sold one time for 45 years. So Uncle Phil would have had to buy Uncle Phil wouldn't have bought that home. His daddy had to buy that home in the 70s. That's the only way he could have had that house. So now he can have that salary. You get what I'm saying? So you got to make him white, basically. Who was his parents? I forgot.
Yeah, I remember his mama. I think he was from like North Carolina.
Come on. Yeah, I remember this. So yeah, it's like some. So understand the way that math works that you're talking about is you can make that salary if you inherit the house, but then you got to be white. So they made a show in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air about white people painted black. It's just period what happened. I'm talking about the nature of how he was a judge in this house. Yeah, it was judges in that house that inherited from their parents that weren't judges. Does that make sense? They weren't black. And so like this narrative of like racial ascension became a normal part of the makeup of black folks across America to the point now they don't even understand Simone Sanders being on MSNBC is a giant fail. Why? Because she's basically a talking head for the sitting president in your media that has done nothing for black people. Why would you want that person to be your representation of media in a media channel? It don't make no sense to not understand that. But they don't understand nothing. Caller, what's the last thing you want to say to the audience?
I ain't got anything else to say. I do appreciate the channel, bro. And keep going, man.
Come on, man. Come on. We're going to get to it tonight. Call in. You don't let him be the only one. I ain't trying to holler people down, but I'm just telling you, it ain't just counting the salaries. It's looking at the timelines and it's looking at race. It's multi-layered. And it's looking at how they buy and sell homes in that neighborhood. It's not about your neighborhood or a middle-class neighborhood. See, you can do that with Roseanne. You know why? Because Roseanne's house is $130,000 today in Indiana. Because they give white folks normal life and they give black folks what Shannon Dungy, the executive at ABC, that greenlit Blackish said, fantastical television. Wish fulfillment television is what she said you have to give black people. Wish fulfillment television. Well, I hope you can wish your way into a Christmas gift or some medical coverage if you fall and fracture your ankle. Can we talk about it more? I'm gonna go through this through a couple of tweets, and I'm gonna come to callers, and we're gonna get out of here. More. Come on, Chris. Chris said Tony's talking about multi-generational social capital passing its wealth down. I'm talking about whiteness. They gave us a black people show that cut black people's lives out of the show, and then just gave us like, well, wealth don't, y'all rich. Nobody we could afford that. No black person. I'm gonna give you the narrative of how LA developed, how black people were in the box, near South Central, moved over to Compton, and then at best moved to Ladera Heights in the 90s. They got us all the way in Brentwood in the 90s, in the early 90s. Bruh. Oh my God, they done told y'all anything. They done told y'all anything. I know some of y'all ain't never been here to understand what I'm saying. This is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the world. And they put a black person in there and then put it on national TV. So understand, people told us, I don't want to see stories about the ghetto. That's why they justified having the Fresh Prince on. Wait, that's not a story about not the ghetto. That's just a story about like white people that are painted black because there's no black people like that. Just didn't happen. America didn't develop or create that. We didn't get reparations. We didn't become those are the homes of people who produce things. We were shut out of being the producers. So instead of us getting the honest portrayal of what it means to be shut out of production, we got the narrative of the outcome of being producers to calm us down and create a whole generation of people who don't want to hear nothing but what's the outcome of coming out of production? Give me a post-reparation show so I can feel good and go to sleep tonight. But it's okay. Don't complain to me when your school closed over COVID. Don't complain to me when you don't have enough money for food. More decadent veiled nonsense. You can't do politics in a world where those that need the politics most are fed magical wealth nonsense. Again, only 5% of black families are worth more than $350,000. Only 10%, the top 10% of black homes, so 20 million black homes, 2 million break $150,000 or more. So like 150 around there, only 2 million break that. Almost all black retirees. Only 5% break $350,000. We have nearly no millionaires. But all we do is talk about millionaires as if they ain't even rich. This is the most fantastical group of poor people in modern history. ADOS black Americans. And the reason you don't have black politics is they created a world where your stomach is full on magic beans. Can we talk about it, caller? What's your name? Where you calling from? What's your take on everything?
Again, man, it just speaks to, first of all, it would have been tight. They would have made it a post-reparation show. It would have took place after reparations. It would have gave it some kind of credibility. But
at least, hold on. Then you got to deal with slavery. Then you got to deal with Jim Crow, and also then you got to make sure that everybody knows it's fantasy. They don't want to tell us it's fantasy. They want us to believe that actually is a reality for some black folks. When in reality, that's not a reality for nearly no black families in America. None. Zero. Probably the only way, let me say, is like if your mama white, which makes it so you inherit it through your white line. That's probably the only way. Or a black celebrity, but I don't count them. They're in the hundreds.
I think the most fantastical part of it is the introduction, like you stated earlier, of a whole black wealth class. Like at least in the first show, he was surrounded by, they showed that he was an outlier. It still was fantastical, but at least it was shown, even like not Dr. Phil, but Uncle Phil, their family was an outlier in their neighborhood. But in this show, it seems like he's an extension of a whole class of black people that live that lifestyle.
For me, honestly, it's the same thing because black people wasn't in that neighborhood. I don't even think people understand. Like, if most of y'all, like a lot of black people are calling in all across the country in this show, a lot of y'all don't have a neighborhood like Brentwood. We talking about Rodeo Drive, Beverly Hills, Brentwood. We talking about like you got to go across to New York and then go across the ocean to find another neighborhood like this. This is not just upper class. This is elite production level. What kind of walnuts do you produce? What kind of contracts with the government you got type of wealth? But they just showed it to us and we believed it. And then we started trying to figure out how we can fit that in a narrative of income. And there's a reason income is taxed at 40%. It's where regular people get their money.
I actually just bought a home, right?
Yes. And
the process was insane. Like, and I'm talking about nothing like this, but just the process of all the paperwork and it was just insane.
And I said that's no racial covenants. One, that's no racial covenants. Two, understand also, we put 3% down and do 30-year mortgages. We're talking about it like when this house is sold, and we'll talk about it in a second. They're doing 17%. What that does is it speeds up the clock. One, it makes it so you put more down. You're going to put between 20% and 50% down. But then also, you're going to try to pay that off as fast as possible. 10 years. So now you're paying like $13,000 a month, while the middle black family makes 30. Like it's so fantastical. Y'all might as well just made them superheroes. Like the whole Banks family in the Fresh Prince were superheroes, and they came down with some magical diamonds. Just do that. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I would say maybe Judge Banks was getting that money on the low, man. He wasn't a judge. Maybe he was looking out for some people on the low. That's how he was able to afford the crib.
Wait, break that out. So what you saying, and I'm not telling you that Rick, when I was doing Freeway Rick's documentary, a lot of people mix it up that the ghetto was over here and then the boule, because we don't really have was over there. No, it was a lot of his houses that was in other people's names from the dope money. See, like what you saying is that maybe he was doing some other stuff. Well, that's not what everybody told us. What they said to us is, I don't want to see no more shows about the ghetto. Well, if this is still the ghetto and this is from dope money, then show it to us.
All right, brother. You take it easy, man. Get well, man.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for calling in. Oh, man. Look, I don't mean to, I try to keep the discussion going and moving, and we out here pushing. We having this discussion about this $30 million or $100 million family, basically. They done put in this new Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Oh, man. Black folks. No context. Middle black family in America today make $45,000. Only 5% of black homes, 20 million black homes, will say like 700,000 homes. Almost all black retirees, that's a pension in their house. That's a pension in their house. It's not liquid money. So your grandmama that got a house in Compton and got a pension from the USPS, valued up together, and got $20,000 in the bank in the top 5%. And we doing these shows. Can we talk? Don't make no sense. Somebody came back and he was supportive, and I shout him out, Christian Mosley. He said, it's like sounding an alarm. He came under my post and said, but the people you're trying to warn are covering their ears. We've been sold the lie that you just need a wealthy mindset, wealth building mindset to get like the top 5%, arguably 1.1 to 2% of ADOS. The math ain't mathing for me. Chris, top 5% is $350,000. That's the rock. That's the rock. That's top 5. It's not top 1%. This family, meaning the Banks family, meaning Uncle Phil, meaning this $9 million house, is a fantastical image, and it makes no sense to be on television when there are 20 million black homes and half, and you can look at it right here below. This is black families by decile. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit by decile. And what you see is when you zoom in, the bottom half added together is worth negative wealth. Negative at that time, I did this a few years ago, negative 200 billion when I calculated it, added together, the whole bottom half of the race. 10 million black families worth negative $200 billion. The top 10% has 75% of all the wealth. So the families worth 150 up to whatever else had 75% of the little bit of black wealth, almost all boomer retirees. People ask us, meaning ADOS, meaning young black professionals, to do politics in a world of magic beans. It's impossible because magic is always easier. It's always easier. Let me take another caller. 310-388-3499. Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Chris, and I'm calling from Memphis, Tennessee.
What's up, Chris? So, did you know? Okay, let's frame this. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but it's really taped in a house that's in Brentwood. This house is at 251 North Bristol Avenue. When you look at this house, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, 251 North Bristol Avenue, believe it or not, America's favorite home, was not located in Bel-Air at all, but in Brentwood. They're adjacent. They're adjacent. But when you look at this house, and we're going to go back, I'm going to let you come in before I read this article. It's in a neighborhood that is 79% white today. So you can only imagine what it was in the 90s. Today, Brentwood is 79% white, 2% African American, and you can imagine that a chunk of that is not ADOS. Understand this. I can give it to you in raw numbers. Out of 35,000 residents in Brentwood today, not 2022, 30 years later, after all of the supposed progress, Obama been president and all that, there are 500 black people in Brentwood. So what was it then, 115? So they were 5 of the 115. It's right here in front of you. You can see it. 26,000 are white, 1,900 are Hispanic, but those are probably the workers. They be living in the back houses and the maids and the pool people. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not being xenophobic at all. Blacks are not really doing those services. 569. What is interesting is mix. That's somebody with a white mama or white daddy often. 1,100 of the people. That's how you get up in there. Because then basically you sidestep ADOS. You Jordan Peele. Your mama had you in Manhattan. You're damn near a white person. Yeah, you black out in skin, but in terms of privilege, you benefit from white privilege. Obama. Inherit $500,000, liquid wealth. Well, of the top 5% of black families are worth $350. You basically are a beneficiary of white privilege through your white mama outside of being king. Give me your take on this whole take. I'm just talking real numbers. Everybody needs to understand we ain't playing no more.
No, absolutely. And one thing I find interesting about this show is that the fact that you mentioned about them doing a reboot of this show. It makes me want to think about who are like the primary consumers of television, especially for in the Black community, which I would say are overwhelmingly Black women. And so when you think about how this show kind of, or may potentially like guide people's aspirations, and I think one thing that you and I think his name is Zoe, the Zoe gentleman. You guys talked about toxic aspiration.
Toxic ambition.
I kind of feel like this sort of blends into that.
Yep.
And helping and kind of forming how Black people, especially my generation, young Black people, young adult Black people, have this idea that we're gonna make our way into this, as you said, fantasy land.
Don't nobody make their money through labor, but regular folk. It's taxed too high. Ain't nobody trying to pay 40% tax. You make your money through inheriting these properties because they done made so many carve-outs that basically in LA, you can have this house and still be, your grandmama paid it off. The $700 has been paid off. And you make your money both on renting it and the fact that you can take loans on it. You ain't got no property tax because you pay a property tax on $700,000 on an $8 million house. That's how they do it here. That's why you don't need racial covenants, because you done made race part of wealth. The problem is when you have the major shows on television reflect a narrative that race has basically flattened out and don't matter no more. Don't nobody want to do politics. So looking at this article, don't go nowhere because I'm going to come right back to you. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air house isn't even in Bel-Air. 3 decades ago, in 2000, we was not talking about 1970. This ain't even 10 years ago, man. Come on. What kind of time machine is Black people in between verses and I'm gonna come out with another album if I'm Faith Evans or Ludacris? When are y'all gonna let these old ass people go? It's time. They done had it's 30 years ago. But nobody's trying to hear the Temptations rap. Like the Temptations come out and say, I'm gonna come out with a rap song in 2005. But that's the equivalent. All this dye these people using. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air house isn't even in Bel-Air. 3 decades ago, Will Smith settled into his new kingdom and won our hearts as the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Years later, he brings the house where his throne once stood back into the spotlight, just in time for a heartwarming reunion. But to everyone's surprise, the house isn't even located in Bel-Air, so they just gonna resell it. If you feel cheated in the slides, there aren't many differences between Bel-Air and Brentwood. Both Los Angeles neighborhoods are home to the ultra wealthy and feature huge mansions that set the tone for high-end real estate in the city and in the world. And while Brentwood's name isn't as familiar to the general public, the area is considered to be one of the most affluent neighborhoods in all of Los Angeles, and again, the world. Caller, what do you think about the new show and the fact that the new show is using the name of this show? And what's your final take on what this has done to Black people and their perceptions of wealth overall?
Well, my hope is with this show that it does it continues kind of some of the job this first show did in highlighting the issues that Black people go through. Say, like for example, Carlton and his issues being identified as Black, or Will having to accept the realities of his life. And so, because myself, I went through a lot of that, so I can kind of relate. But my hope is that it doesn't continue driving this wedge between what is reality, what is attainable, and as you said, what we need. And just listening to your show over the past few months, because I'm kind of late to the party, realizing, as you say, why we need politics, it's even more so evident now. And as you say, we can't really reach this level without even in the field and getting the politics in. So I appreciate you for putting the real numbers out, and you definitely helped me come a long way.
Well, stay tuned, because we about to get into racial covenants in Brentwood. We about to show that. Caller, callers, please call it 310-388-3499 if you want to speak on this. They got the new Fresh Prince coming in, but they ain't really explained the old one. The old one came out again. Shapiro, author of Black Wealth, White Wealth, comes on my show and makes clear before the 90s, they didn't give black folks white folks, but black folks needed it most, wealth data. They just told us income. So this stuff sounded like it made sense. We didn't have Google to really see everything. Well, now we know it don't make no sense. So why is it on TV? I mean, none. The income level tells you the whole story of the area. The average household income in Brentwood, these $5-8 million homes, is $220. The median, the middle income is only $130, because what they're doing is they're not paying for the house with no damn income. Who does that? They're not paying for no $9 million house with that income. Let's keep it going. They are using that income to glaze the cake, not to create it. It's not the flour, it's not the eggs, it ain't the sugar. It's the glaze on top of the cake. It's the cherry on top. Can I talk today? Because it seems like people don't understand what's off market. That's what they say. It say off market. So the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air home. This is this property was sold once in the last 44 years. Let me zoom in. This property was sold once in the last 44 years. It was sold for $730 in 78. Estimated at $8 million today. It is really beyond stupid that house and many in the area last sold in the 70s. For obscene amounts at that time. The Fresh Prince home was sold once in 44 years. Blacks couldn't buy it then when it was sold in 78. And they would have had $150,000 as down payment at the low end. You can go up to like about $300 really to get out of that interest and down payment in the 70s. Please do let me know how. What did he say? Zeke, that was Uncle Phil's name back in North Carolina, got $300,000 together in the 70s and sidestepped racial covenants. Before I take another caller, let me continue the concept. I need you to understand basics because so many of us have not done the work. In 1981, you're coming from Carter. In 78, it's about the same. Interest rates are at like 17%. In the early 70s, I'm talking about for homes. In 73, 74, it's about 8%. It rose to like 17%. It didn't come back down to 85. Hold on. Let's remember that this home is bought in 78. Okay. So they paying 18% interest, 17% interest. People don't know anything, even putting the racial covenants, meaning contracts had lines in there that you cannot sell them to black folks. Talking about redlining. Even putting that aside, you had to put down 20% and the interest rate was 17%, 1978. So in the 70s money, you need to pay a mortgage of $9,000 and put down $200,000 in 70s money. That's like putting down like $1 million today and paying like $30,000 a month. The median black home family altogether made $30,000 in 1978. You don't have to ask me. It's right here. January 78, black. Oh, can I talk about it? Racial median income. So $30,000 is what the middle family made. Well, let's go further. This is the racial redlining map for Los Angeles. Green is first grade. Red is fourth grade. That's us. Red is fourth grade. Redlining. That house is like in this unincorporated area they were building out, but it's right next to the green area. It's all green. Please make it make sense how they put a show on the air that erased black history in America, let alone Los Angeles. But y'all ate it up and they want to show it to us again in 2022? Caller, what's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, what's up, Tone? This is Fawcett Media, Frank Fawcett.
What's up, man? I think you called in before. Tell me that inside scoop because you be having it.
Oh yeah, I sure do. Absolutely. I got my YouTube channel up now too, so check me out.
All right.
I'm doing like current events and stuff. But just to give a little proper context, I don't know if this is actually shooting the producer's bail because the Fresh Prince story is actually based on Benny Medina's life story.
Come on.
Who was Will Smith's manager. So, you know, Benny Medina was a Dominican teenager that grew up in East Los Angeles.
Wait, can you slow that down? Say it again. Can you say it again? What was he? Because I want to make sure.
Dominican teenager.
Dominican, meaning not Adolf.
Right.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Right. He grew up in East Los Angeles, was in and out of foster care, and a white family.
Come on.
A wealthy white family.
Now it makes sense.
A friend of his.
Different strokes. Different strokes.
Right. And then also, he had a relationship with Kerry Gordy, who was Barry Gordy's son. So he spent some time over there, but probably not as much, obviously. But that's the basis for the Fresh Prince story. So my implication for Hollywood right now is you don't want to hire Adolph's writers, so you run out of original stories. You run out of stories when you want to tell a black story. You don't have somebody like me or you bringing our life experience into the room.
Well, the thing is, if you use real black people, you won't get poll stories because we all poll. It's just what the numbers are. But you want this story without the white folks because you don't want to show that Uncle Phil got to be white, his wife got to be white, Carlton got to be white to make this make sense economically. It's different strokes. We never did the politics to get past different strokes. So what you did instead is just lie. It was a lie. That's what you basically saying. And I'm telling you, when you look at racial covenants, you look at redlining in Los Angeles, you look at the home and how they sell homes in that neighborhood, you only get that home as a judge through inheritance. And you only inherit that home as a judge if you white. I don't even understand how you don't know that as everybody that's watching. I don't understand. I mean, I guess it's okay. Black people can have wings and they can have hairy feet like hobbits and they can do magic. All that's the same stuff right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just the same aspirational stuff that came out of the Cosby Show. Bill Cosby was literally engineering a family to be a representation of something that wasn't realistic. He actually used I think it was Dr. Alvin Poussin to do studies on what would this doctor-lawyer couple look like and what would their relationship be with their children coming up in this fantasy world. But it's not really anchored in anything real. Although we enjoyed it, it wasn't real.
Well, let me tell you again, the part that we enjoyed, they're gonna take that out. We love the ADOS familial happy comedy of it all. They're gonna take all that out. They're gonna strip out everything that black people enjoy, all this, and then they're gonna just give us like some kind of drama in their head that makes another Our Kind of People show. They're gonna do the same show, just call it Fresh Prince.
Yeah.
Why? This is what Fresh Prince was. It was a comedy.
Well, I think Our Kind of People probably comes after because there was a viral trailer that this director came up with. It was the dark version of the Fresh Prince, which was just his kind of key to get into the business. So shout out to him for really hustling it. But ultimately it does just become a rehash of an old story.
Well, I have to say, and I ain't gonna say F him, but I'm gonna say that's just some grifter nonsense. We got too much information now. Like you just gonna sell black people trash. Ain't nobody gonna say you sold black people trash, and we know now. It's just lies. We didn't know then. Like I don't like using people like Suge as a quote, but Suge said once, if you did dope back in the 80s, didn't nobody know. If you did crack today, it's different. What's happening now is that black folks want to do this kind of like wealth aspiration stuff, and we know all the numbers now. And then get mad when you tell them, well, why don't we just make it like they got magic too and make them wizards or whatever else? But again, I love the backstory because it makes it make sense. If it was a white family, it makes sense. That's who was up there.
Right.
I'm showing the map right now of LA, first grade. Black people can go up there. Can we talk?
Yeah, you the help, baby. Back then.
Yeah, if you the help.
The help.
Yeah, but and then most likely you ain't own the house. You in the back house. Come on. So
that's right. He was living in the back house too. The white family didn't let him live in the back house. He was living in the back.
Bruh. Make it make sense. Listen to this. A Southern California dream deferred, racial covenants in Los Angeles. As manufacturing labor from the Great Migration afforded skilled Black migrants a middle-class income, the previously unattainable suburban Southern California dream became closer to reality. Unlike the congested and deteriorating properties of South Central LA, working-class suburbs like Compton allowed Blacks to raise their family. I said Compton. Understand, we're moving from South Central to Compton. So we go from South Central to Compton to Ladera. That's the move. That's the triangle for Black folk. So ain't no Brentwood in that. Hold on. Let me finish. To raise their families in manicured homes with space enough for livestock and petting farms. They ain't have no petting farms up there in Brentwood. Earlier in Los Angeles, before the 50s, suburbs fighting integration often became the site of significant racial violence. Whites resorted to bombing, firing into, and burning crosses on the lawns of Black families in areas south of Slauson. White gangs in Southgate and Huntington Park confronted Blacks who dared to travel through their area. This violent reaction to Blacks' presence in white communities echoed across the nation as the Great Migration transformed cities in the North and West. In 1917, the Supreme Court ruling of Buchanan versus Wardley, you remember this from Dr. Cosby, declared municipally mandated racial zoning unconstitutional. Unfortunately, the case only dealt with legal statutes, leaving the door open for alternative agreements such as restrictive covenants, which served to perpetuate residential segregation. So they basically reframed the narrative of not only America, but Los Angeles and Black folks, as if this ain't how LA developed, what you're looking at on screen. Let me read a little more of this, and then I'm going to let you give your last thoughts. Following the Supreme Court decision of Shelley versus Kramer in 48, racially restrictive covenants became a political liability as it dissipated the legality of restrictive housing practices. In Compton, by this time, undevelopedly recently annexed land between the white suburb and the concentrated Black community inspired ambitious developers to capitalize on the financial potential of integration. Davenport builders spearheaded this shift, selling the first unrestricted homes in 52 on a patch of land that was formerly a cornfield, meaning without covenants. The development of the freeway system made it easy for whites to travel further away to the suburbs, further instigating segregation. Blacks soon overcrowded the South Central area of Los Angeles, eventually boxed into an area confined within the largely uncrossable borders of the 110 and 10. Let me show you something. This is the 10 freeway. This is the 405. I'm pointing at it on screen. This is the 110 and this is the 105. In Freeway Cracking the System, we cover this as well. Documentary I did, nominated for an Emmy on the crack epidemic in Iran-Contra. This box is where Black folks lived. Then they moved over to Compton, and then they came back in this box and up in the Ladera area. That's it. That's it. Where they talking about is up here. And if it's 2% Black folks now, what you think it was in the 90s? Caller, give me your last take on this.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I don't know if I guess you're familiar with Clarence Avon, the Black Godfather. They did a documentary on him, and recently his wife got killed up in, I think in Bel-Air, actually. That's the first Black family to move into that area. And he was a high-level executive record producer at the time, and close friends with Quincy Jones, who eventually became the second Black family to move in that area, and probably one of the few out of that 2%.
Well, it wasn't 2 then. It probably was like 0.1 back then. Go ahead.
Right. No, he was the only one, and a white man had to actually give him the money and actually sign for the house, I believe. I was watching the documentary a while back. I have to iron out those details, but yeah, I believe it was some type of, you're a good asset to me working through this white system, and this is your reward for coming to Los Angeles and everything. Before that, Quincy Jones and all the celebrities were in Ladera Heights.
Well, before that, they was over here in West Adams in these big old houses in West Adams because they couldn't even get over there.
Marvin Gaye was.
Yeah, that's where Marvin Gaye was. My aunt said he was in the front of this building because they own this. A lot of these families built these buildings, so they built this building, and he was saying like family aunt. It ain't my aunt. like literally like Godfather type of thing. He was in the front of the building, and Marvin Gaye come down the street, and he said he was smoking. I'm giving you a real story. He was smoking like some reefer, and the guy come out of down the street coming down, and he basically said the guy asked him, "Can I get a hit? Like can I hit that or something?" And he says, "What?" And the guy says, "What's going on?" And it's Marvin Gaye walking down, because Marvin Gaye was killed down the street over here. But what's ironic also is that you have that happening, but then you have Freeway Rick first see dope down the street over here, and you also have this is like the epicenter of the crack cocaine epidemic for America. Like literally, like right here, I was talking to somebody, and I'm not trying to spread no conspiracies, but he said it's an old black dude. And he was telling me like a decade ago that somebody threw like back in like the late 70s a key right here in the front, and nobody knew what it was, because it was like back then they wasn't doing that, they were doing sherm. And so nobody knew what it was, but like some white man drove past and threw it outside. I'm just telling you what he told me. All right. And he said everybody was like, what is that?
They used to pull up and people talk about neighborhoods all over the country where they just left the truck full of guns.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem too far out of possibility.
Thank you, Dwight, for the support. Thank you so much, man, for calling in. Thank you for the caller, and thanks for the support on the super chat separately. Oh man, this is a good show. We just talking. Can we talk reality? Since everybody want to talk reality again, black folks live in this little box. I want to give everybody a map that ain't from here. This over here we couldn't even get over there. Then we moved here to kind of spread our wings, and then this deteriorated, and we moved back into here. That's it. That's LA. I don't know why that was on TV, but it was fantastical. And I'm talking about the kind of fantasy that don't make no sense. It never made sense to have this show in Bel Air or Brentwood. Part of Black America's problem is too many made a world in their heads where blackness never happened and masked their erasure in black empowerment. It played on a total lack of awareness of race and wealth. You have the Fuller map that I was showing you earlier, the racial map, red, green. We know red means that's where black folks was at. Neighborhood spotlight, Brentwood's exclusivity, and again, the reason we're talking about Brentwood is the house in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Let's tie it together so we don't get lost. I don't want nobody lost. And why are you talking about Brentwood in a show about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Well, I got to go back and show you the house is actually, this house is in Brentwood, not Bel-Air, but it's adjacent, so it's still an impossible house for black folks. We have already talked about the fact that there are nearly no black people there now, and those few black people rent largely. They rent something. So back in the 92, it might have been 50 black people over there, 75. So now we come forward back to the Times article, neighborhood spotlight, Brentwood's exclusivity can't quite shake the taint of infamy. I believe this is from 2016. The racial covenants that prevented African Americans and others from buying homes in the area were eventually struck down. But soaring house prices and the de facto segregation of LA for much of the 20th century, what's that, 99? Kept it overwhelmingly white. Today, the Simpson house on Rockingham has been demolished and Nicole's condo has a new address. Come on, let's go. They talk about a number of properties, but Brentwood area. On those large lots, residents began to build the luxury homes that Brentwood would become famous for. The extensive list of rules that they had to abide by, setbacks required, only one home per lot, the prohibition of sales to people of color, ensured the most of the neighborhood would stay suburban and racially uniform. So black folks, in order to even come close, they would have had to buy the property and put 10 families on it. You couldn't do that. That's what the rules were for. Keep you out. Brentwood Park's success led to the entire area being redubbed Brentwood, and Brentwood, the neighborhood, as well as Brentwood, the state of mind, spread north across Sunset Boulevard and into the steep, craggy canyons of the Santa Monica Mountains. So this is 2016, and the median house was 3.5. It's probably like 5 now. 2021, it's probably like 5.55. Money been moving. Can we talk today? Can we talk? Let me take another caller. We talk about this Fresh Prince. What you think about it?
Hi, Tone. This is Antoine calling from Seattle.
Give me your take on this. We talk about this Fresh Prince spinoff and the Fresh Prince original show, and we framing this in context of what we now know about wealth and making this case for one, why this reboot don't make no sense now, and two, how. And one caller today, he framed it all. He said this is basically built off of a real person's life, Dominican that moved in with a white family, which would make it all make more sense in terms of wealth and racial covenants. And then they let him live in the back house. That ain't what they gave us on TV. They gave us a chocolate covered white family. Chocolate covered. I'm sorry, a chocolate covered white family. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. So I don't know. I'm gonna be optimistic about this one. I feel like the message that you and Yvette Carnell, along with some other, internet personalities and activists, have been creating a steady pulse that's changing the narrative. That they're not advertising about, discussion on wealth and, the history that led to that widening still wealth gap. And I feel like maybe this show is in response to that, because it doesn't make sense to bring back a show 30 years in the past where, as you say, the data shows that it wasn't even like possible for Adolf Americans. And I feel like the young people today, because they've been so much educated, they don't understand the context of how they exist now. And I think with COVID and the shortage supplies, man, I live in Seattle. Seattle's expensive, right? And I was just telling my sister, I went to the grocery store, how heavy whipping cream was $3.48 last week, and now it's $5.32. That's like a 52% increase. Like, things are increasing in cost and they're dwindling in supply. And I think that maybe that is going to put the pressure on the younger generation and make them look at really the life they live and what they've inherited. So I think this is just maybe another way to lull people back into slumber so they won't have this discussion. Because if you can make people escape away into a fantasy world that doesn't exist, and then, like you said, they won't take the necessary actions to advocate for themselves. So that's kind of like
it neutralizes black politics. It neutralizes black politics. That's what this does.
Exactly, and then people just don't realize. Like, I used to work in banking not so long ago, and people just don't realize that the type of wealth transfers that are happening. Like, I've experienced firsthand where, this would never happen for a black family. A girl making $50,000, $60,000 and wondering if she's ever going to be able to buy a home, to getting an early inheritance of $2 million in excess of that, or a person graduating from school, which is as a thank you gift, getting $50,000 in cash. Like the younger black generation, they just don't understand the type of, and this is normal. This isn't even like the high end of whiteness. It's just like the low end, like the middle, and people just don't realize what's coming.
Yeah, we got like Culver City where the houses are like $2-3 million. That's our upper middle. White folks that have a $2 million house. So right. This whole thing was nonsense. Caller, I'm gonna let you go. So here we are. We got a new Fresh Prince coming out. It don't make no sense. Ain't got no comedy, and it's still showing us wealth, but it looked like it's showing us even more crazy wealth. We got the old Fresh Prince. While it had comedy, it had its good parts. Generally, it shouldn't have been on television, not as it was, because wasn't no black folks moving over there, and it basically erases the truth of how we got here, how we missing reparations. All of it's being masked by people that are so busy trying to celebrate, they don't understand you ain't got nothing to celebrate. This is Tone Talks. Please go to tonetalks.org, subscribe and donate. I know a lot of your friends don't watch it, but maybe then you gotta ask, what's wrong with my circle? I'm out.